What's up everybody, Greg here with Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be checking out the Canon C500 MKII, looking at all the different buttons, the ports, the configuration and layout of this camera, so you can get really familiarized with it if you plan on using one on a shoot. So let's dive right in and check this thing out. So stripping the Canon C500 MKII down to the body alone, and then as we go through this and I talk about some of the accessories, I'm going to add them on so you can get a good idea of how you actually put this thing together. But if you've ever used any of the other Canon cinema line like the C100, C200, or C300, it's going to be a very familiar feel to you. As you can see as I rotate over, it has a lot of the similar button layouts and kind of ports on it. But Canon has added a few extra things to the exterior of the C500 MKII to make it really stand above the rest of the cinema line, as well as compete with other production cinema cameras out there. So starting on the front of the camera, looking in the top left, you have a video terminal port, and this allows you to plug in the LCD screen using one of the video terminal cables, and this plugs right into the LCD screen, which I'm going to go over in a little bit and kind of show you how that assembles and how it attaches onto the top of the camera. Going down to the bottom left side here, you have a push to auto iris, and this is also a customizable button. So any of these buttons that you see that has a number on it, as you can see it says 14 right here, is a user assignable button. So all of that, if you don't use the push to auto iris, you can set that up to be whatever you want in the menus, which is really cool. Over on the opposite side, you have your one-shot AF button. Again, that's a custom assignable button. This is the 15th custom assignable button on this camera. Going to the actual mount itself, you'll notice that it's a little bit different than previous mounts. It's actually a user swappable mount. So right now I have the EF version on there, but if you undid these 4 screws, you could take this off and put on either the locking EF or a PL version of the same mount. Now opening it up, this is where the C500 really steps above some of the other cameras out there, being a full frame camera. Now it's a little hard to see in there, maybe I'll throw in a shot so you can actually see what this looks like, but it's an absolutely massive sensor, being a full frame 5.9K sensor that they took from their C700 full frame, which they released I think about a year and a half ago or so. And this is the direction a lot of these higher end cinema cameras are going with the Alexa Mini LF, as well as the FX9 and the Red VistaVision full frame sensors. So it's definitely a great future proofing feature to have that full frame sensor, and you also get the option to shoot Super 35 as well as Super 16 if you wanted to have those tighter options. But having that full frame allows you to get super wides as well as having that nice depth of field. All right, moving on to the left side of the camera. As you can see, there's not a ton here. On the bottom, you have your airy rosette, so you can attach any kind of handle on it, or the actual handle that comes with the Canon C500, which is the same one that comes with the C200, C300, all of those. And you have a couple different buttons on here. You have a custom button, which is custom button 1, defaults to focus guide. You have a joystick for any sort of menu navigation, as well as a record, start, stop, and then a scroll wheel, which you can change to do your shutter or your aperture. Right underneath the RO rosette, there's also a small port that you actually plug the grip into, and this just keeps it nice and tidy because all the cables are hidden and tucked away, and you don't have them running all over the place. I'm going to leave this off for now just so you can see a little better. You'll also notice there's a bunch of vents on here. One of them is the air intake, so where the air is actually coming into the camera, and then one of them is exhaust, so exhausting out the hot air to keep the camera nice and cool when you're running it. Right underneath that, you have all of your options for controlling your audio levels. So you can change your levels manually. You can set them to auto or manual. You can change it from 48 volt mic or line input, depending on what you're doing. And you have 2 channels here, which go to the XLRs on the back, which we're gonna look at in a second. Towards the top of the camera, there's 2 more ports. One of them is this one right here, which I actually didn't know what it was, so I had to look it up. And according to the manual, it is the System Expansion Terminal. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but it's this terminal right here, and that could be used for anything. System expansion means that they could probably add things on in the future, something that they might not have out right now. Continuing on with the other port that's on the top, it's a USB micro, and this is used to plug in a GPS receiver, so you can actually get GPS data into your camera if you're shooting in locations that you want to have that information. Moving on to the back side of the camera, where you have more of your I/O panel as well as a bunch of ports. Starting at the top and kind of working our way down, we have our remote A port, which allows you to remotely control the camera, triggering start and stop record. You have an HDMI, which is a full-size HDMI out. You have your 1/8 inch mic as well as a headphone jack to monitor your audio, either coming in through the 1/8 inch or the XLRs. Over on the left, we have the monitor, which is an SDI or BNC out. You have your SDI out as well. And this is going to be if you're sending a full signal out that you want to record into like an Atomos Shogun or something like that, you're going to use the SDI out. And then a SDI or BNC time code to sync time code up with multiple cameras, or if you're syncing with a slate. Underneath that, you have two XLR inputs. Both of these go to the panel on the side that we just looked at. So you have all of your control for that right over here. You have your audio status, so you can actually turn that on or off on the LCD, as well as your 12-volt DC in using a 4-pin XLR. And this can go out directly to the wall, or you can get a battery plate that uses this 4-pin XLR, like Wooden Camera has a bunch of these plates, to use V-mount or gold mount batteries. Moving further on to the back, you have your battery slot where the actual battery goes in using the BPA batteries. It comes with a BPA 60 and it actually sticks out quite a bit, as you can see. It's not a very deep slot, but with the A60s, you get about 2 hours of runtime depending on what kind of workload you're putting onto this and how much you're actually recording. Over on the left, you have some controls for your menu, so opening up your menu, canceling or backing out of a specific menu, another joystick to kind of navigate around, and then a function button, which is just a custom assignable button that you can set up, and that is the 12th button. Here you also have the expansion slot where you actually screw on different expansion packs. You can either screw on a viewfinder, there's some I/O panels which gives you some more XLRs, as well as V-mount batteries and battery plates and things, and all of that goes through some contacts underneath this if you take off these two Allen keys on the top. So I guess moving a little bit more onto the top plate here as well, they've beefed this up and reinforced it. It has a really solid metal plate now, and you also get a ton of mounting options for accessories using these 1/4-20 holes. There's 6 of them on the sides, and then you also have 2 in the center here, one in a cold shoe, as well as a ribbed 1/4-20, which you use for the handle on the top. So they've kind of changed this setup over from the original C300 and C200 and made it a really nice and easy way to add on a handle. The back here just slides right into the hot shoe, and then the front will screw right down into the 1/4-20 on the top. And as you can see, just like that, you can add on a handle, which adds a bunch more mounting options, as well as a couple cold shoes and some mounting places for your LCD screen and other accessories. Now, if you want to make this a little more sturdy, you can put in another Allen key right into here, or an Allen bolt, and that'll tighten it down onto this with 2 screws instead of just the one hand tightening screw. And like I just said with that handle, you can use this to mount on your LCD using this sort of ribbed 1/4-20 on the front. That'll mount right onto the LCD bracket. So you put this down, and using all of these hand tightening knobs just makes it set up super quick and easy, as well as breakdown for when you need to pack it up and put it away. So like that, and then you have a lot of flexibility with this monitor, so you can kind of set it up on top. If you're used to shooting like a red shooter, you can have it down on the ground if you want to do it more of a shoulder mount and kind of have it over your shoulder. There's a bunch of different options and really nice flexibility. And the great thing about this monitor that I love is that there's no tightening things down. It just uses a friction-based system, so you just kind of move it to where you want, and then it's going to stay just like that. So I really love this monitor and this setup. And again, you'd plug in the terminal on the back and run that down into that video terminal on the front of the camera. So flipping this over and looking at the bottom before we jump over to the main control side of this camera, you have a bunch of different mounting options on here, from 1/4-20, so you have 4 1/4-20s on it spread out throughout the whole base. And then you also have a 3/8 and a couple registration pins to make sure that your plate's not going to move around as you have it mounted on there. Again, this uses that sort of metal reinforced, just like the top does, to keep it super secure and attached to the body, while the rest of it's all using this hard composite plastic to keep it nice and lightweight, or as lightweight as possible. Now flipping around and moving over onto the side that I know you want to see, and that is the main control interface for this camera, and where you're actually going to be doing a lot of the work as you're shooting. Now this has a light up LCD for all of the buttons, or little LEDs behind each of the buttons, so you can see it at night, which is super fantastic, and it just looks really, really clean. We'll kind of start along the bottom and work our way up towards the top. So over on here you have a little scroll wheel, and this allows you to change different things on your lens and your camera settings, like aperture and ISO, depending on what you have selected. You have a record, start, stop button, obviously to start and stop recording, pretty straightforward. You have your white balance and then your custom white balance button, and these also double as your playback and your index for when you're in the media mode where you're actually reviewing footage. Going up from those two custom buttons, you have a nice little jog wheel here with a push button selection in the center. This is really great for going through menus and doing setting changes. And depending on where you are in the camera and what you're doing, these wheels have different functions and features that they do. You just kind of have to play around with them to see what they do in different areas of the camera. Over to the right, you have your slot select button as well as your little LEDs displaying what cards you have in there currently. So I don't have anything in there, but these would light up if we had one of the SD cards in or either the CFast Express cards A or B. Over a little more, there's a little spring-loaded switch that actually opens up the card slots where these go. So you have those two CF Express cards as well as the SD. One of the things I really love about these cards is how fast they are. They're incredibly fast for reading and writing. As you can see, 1700 megabits per second for the read and 1480 for the write. This means that you can transfer footage off of this at amazing speeds. You can fill one of these cards, a 256 gig card, and transfer it in probably 8 minutes, depending on how fast your hard drive is and how fast your computer can transfer it. But these cards can hold up and you can get that footage off and ready to shoot again super quick. Right above that, you have another air intake just for some more air circulation to kind of cool down the camera and cool down the cards as you're shooting. And then you have all of these buttons. Now there's a ton of different stuff here, from your ND filters going on and off. You have your magnification buttons, peaking, zebras, waveforms. This is what the WFM is. You have your LUT on or off, ISO gain, shutter, this little light to turn that light on or off if you don't want to have the lights on. You have your slow and fast motion and your slow and fast motion frames per second. Now all of these, again, like I said, if they have a number on them, they're customizable. So you can change those in the menus to get something that you want. If you don't use some of these features, you can swap them out. Like zebras, I don't really use zebras that much, so I'll switch those probably over to false color. You can set up the peaking to have the correct type of peaking that you want, if you want red, green, blue, whatever the color is. You can change your shutter button. All of these are just customizable is what I'm trying to get at. So really make this camera your own and make it as usable as possible without having to dive into menus. You can get it all with these custom function buttons. Now going up from all those buttons a little bit onto kind of the top side here, you have your power on and off switch. And this is really nice because it gives you a couple different options. You have off, which is obviously the camera's turned off. You have your camera, which is now also the media mode, which they didn't have on the previous models. You actually had to go into a separate switch on this, and it took a little while to switch between camera and media. Now they've changed it over to just be a media button, so you can quickly hop in, review footage, and then get back to shooting without taking too much time. And then a lock, so once you have this all set and you don't want to be changing settings or accidentally changing settings, you can put it in lock mode, and that's going to keep everything locked the way it is. So that's basically everything on the exterior of the Canon C500 Mark II. If I missed anything in this or you have any questions about the exterior and stuff that I covered, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. If you guys want to try this camera out for yourself and you think you got confident enough from this video to use one on your next shoot, check out the links in the description so you can rent one. And if you guys enjoyed this sort of exterior overview of the Canon C500 Mark II, we also have a bunch covering a ton of different cameras, and I'll link to a playlist right up here so you can check that out. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.